The most powerful economic nations gather in Johannesburg for the first ever G20 summit on African soil, but there's one glaring absence: the United States. And when they finally decide to send someone, South Africa says, "Not good enough," with International Relations Minister Ronald Lamola's response being, "We are done." It's up to them. And today we're diving into a diplomatic showdown that has the world watching, because it's about much more than just protocol. So stay with me. Let's break down exactly what happened at the G20 summit in Johannesburg on November 22nd and 23rd, 2025, where South Africa, hosting the G20 presidency since December 2024 as the first African nation to chair this powerful group of the world's largest economies, was supposed to ceremonially hand over the presidency to the United States at the summit's closing ceremony. But President Donald Trump announced he wouldn't attend, citing controversial and widely discredited claims about the treatment of white farmers in South Africa. Then at the 11th hour, the U.S. quietly changed course, sending a diplomatic note saying they'd send a delegation after all, but not a senior official, instead wanting to send Mark Dillard, their charge d'affaires, essentially a junior embassy official. And this is where South Africa drew the line in the sand, because in the world of international diplomacy, these things matter tremendously. Minister Ronald Lamola explained perfectly that the handover must happen at the head of state level, or at least a minister who is properly designated by the President of the United States. And think of it like this. Imagine you're the CEO of a major company handing over leadership to another CEO, but instead of the incoming CEO showing up, they send a middle manager. It's not just disrespectful, it completely undermines the significance of what's happening. Presidential spokesperson Vincent Magwenya put it bluntly: it is a position of principle. America chose to boycott the summit. That is their choice, and it's their prerogative to do so. But what cannot happen is a breach of protocol being forced, because the G20 isn't just any meeting. It represents countries that control about 85% of the global economy and 2/3 of the world population. This is Premier League diplomacy, and South Africa insisted it be treated as such. So South Africa said, if you're sending a charge d'affaires, we'll match that level. Announcing the handover would happen at the Department of International Relations and Cooperation offices in Pretoria, with an equivalent junior official from the South African side, not at the Grand Summit ceremony. And Lamola's message was crystal clear: we are very much ready. We are prepared. We will do it at Durko's offices any time from Monday. But this story is about so much more than diplomatic etiquette. It's about respect, power dynamics, and a changing world order, because South Africa's presidency marked something historic: the fourth consecutive G20 leadership by a global South nation, with Indonesia holding it in 2022, India in 2023, Brazil in 2024, and now South Africa in 2025. South Africa chose the theme solidarity, equality, sustainability for its presidency, putting African development and global South concerns front and center, with President Ramaphosa saying they would put Africa's development at the top of the agenda, and the summit delivered. 42 countries showed up. Everyone except the United States sent high-level representation, with major world leaders gathering in Johannesburg to discuss inequality, sustainable development, and reforming global governance structures that have historically favored wealthy Western nations. The leaders' declaration was adopted with overwhelming support, a document that Lamola called a step toward multilateralism and toward building a bridge between the global North and the global South. But Lamola also sent a powerful message earlier in the year, when the U.S. declined to participate in some preparatory meetings, saying the G20 should send a clear message that the world can move on with or without the U.S. And that statement takes on new meaning now, because the absence of the United States didn't derail the summit. It actually highlighted how the global South is increasingly capable of setting the agenda and driving global conversations without waiting for permission from traditional power centers. Let's talk about the diplomatic chess match that played out here, because both sides were making calculated moves. The United States initially said they wouldn't attend at all, then tried to send a junior official at the last minute, which South Africa saw as an attempt to check a box without showing real commitment. And South Africa's response was masterful, because they didn't refuse the handover. That would have been seen as obstructionist. instead saying, "Fine, we'll hand over, but we'll do it on terms that match the level of respect you're showing us." Lamola spokesperson Crispin Fierai was even more direct. "The United States is not attending. We will mark them absent, and we have marked them absent. The whole world is here, and that's what we want to focus on, our agenda. Those who are not present are not present. It is what it is." And this whole situation was further complicated by inflammatory remarks from White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt, who accused President Ramaphosa of running his mouth, a comment that sparked outrage in South Africa and was seen as deeply disrespectful. The tensions also reflect broader strains between the two countries, with Trump's claims about South Africa, the U.S. withdrawal from several preparatory meetings, and now this protocol dispute all being part of a deteriorating relationship. But South Africa held firm, with Minister Lamola emphasizing, "We did not deny anyone access. The United States is a member of the G20, and if they won't be represented, they can still send anyone at the right level. It's the leaders' summit, and the right level is head of state. It's a special envoy appointed by the president of that country. It could be a minister." So what does all this mean for international relations and global governance? First, it's a clear signal that middle power nations, countries that aren't superpowers but have significant influence, are increasingly willing to stand their ground, with South Africa not backing down even when facing pressure from the world's largest economy. Second, it highlights a shift in global power dynamics because for decades Western nations set the rules and expected others to follow. But now with economic power shifting eastward and southward, those rules are being questioned, and the fact that 4 consecutive global South nations have led the G20 isn't a coincidence. It's a trend. Third, this affects how future summits and international gatherings will function, because if the United States continues to selectively engage or disengage from multilateral forums, other nations are showing they'll proceed without them. Lamola's earlier comment about the world moving on with or without the U.S. isn't just rhetoric. This summit proved it can actually happen, with the summit successfully adopting its leaders' declaration, launching a compact with Africa for development, and setting priorities for sustainable development, all without U.S. leadership participation. And President Ramaphosa expressed hope that the next G20 summit would be held on a mutually agreed date, but also made it clear that South Africa successfully concluded its presidency on its own terms. For the United States, this creates a question. Can you maintain global leadership if you're not showing up? Trump's America First approach means withdrawing from or downgrading participation in international forums. But this episode shows that those forums continue without American participation, and sometimes they don't really miss it. So here's the bottom line. What looked like a simple ceremonial handover became a defining moment about respect, protocol, and shifting global power, with South Africa standing firm on principle, saying that if you want to be treated as a major power, you need to act like one, showing that African nations and the global South won't accept being treated as less than, even by superpowers, and Minister Lamola's words. "We are done. It's up to them," captured this perfectly because South Africa did its job. They hosted a historic, successful summit. They're ready to hand over the presidency, but they won't compromise on dignity and protocol to do it. This is a story we'll be watching closely because it's about more than one handover. It's about the future of international cooperation in an increasingly multipolar world. So what do you think? Did South Africa make the right call? Should protocol matter this much in international relations? Or should they have just taken the practical approach and handed over to whoever showed up? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If you found this breakdown helpful, give this video a thumbs up. It really helps us bring you more in-depth international news analysis. Subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next deep dive into the stories shaping our world. And if you want to understand more about how international diplomacy really works behind the scenes, check out a related video in the card above. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.